The first thing Daniel Mercer noticed wasn't the handcuffs. It was the look in his daughter's eyes. Not fear. She was too young to fully understand what was happening. But confusion. The kind that lingers, that asks silent questions no child should ever have to ask. Why are they taking you? Why aren't you smiling? Why does everyone suddenly look at you like you're someone else? "Daddy?" she whispered, her small voice trembling just enough to crack something deep inside him. Daniel forced a smile, even as cold metal tightened around his wrists. "Hey, Em," he said gently. "It's okay. This is just a misunderstanding." But the officers didn't treat it like one. They moved with certainty, efficiency, like they had already decided the story before he'd been allowed to speak a single word. And in that moment, standing in the doorway of his modest home in Milfield, surrounded by neighbors pretending not to watch, Daniel Mercer, respected defense attorney, known for taking on cases no one else would touch, realized something far more dangerous than fear. Someone wanted him gone. The headlines spread faster than truth ever could. "Innocent no more? Local lawyer tied to major RICO investigation? Mercer at the center of criminal enterprise, police sources confirm." The words felt heavy, deliberate, like stones thrown not just to accuse but to bury. Daniel sat in a holding cell, staring at the thin gray blanket folded on the metal bench. He had spent years defending people from moments like this, guiding them through the chaos, reminding them that the system, flawed as it was, still had room for justice. Now he wasn't so sure. "Mr. Mercer?" He looked up. A young public defender stood outside the bars, her posture slightly nervous, but her eyes steady. "I'm Lila Grant. I've been assigned to your case." Daniel almost laughed, not at her, but at the situation. "I used to assign cases like this," he said quietly. "I know," she replied, stepping closer. "That's why I'm here." There was something in her voice. Not pity, not doubt. Belief. And Daniel hadn't realized how much he needed that until it was standing right in front of him. Lila didn't treat him like a headline. She treated him like a person. Over the next few days, she listened more than she spoke. She read every document, every charge, every line of evidence that painted Daniel as the mastermind behind a sprawling criminal network. Money laundering, bribery, obstruction. It didn't add up. "You didn't do this," she said one evening, files spread across a worn table in the small interview room. Daniel exhaled slowly. "No, I know." He looked at her then, really looked. "That's a dangerous thing to say. Not if it's true." "But truth doesn't always win," he said. Lila paused, then met his gaze. "It does when people refuse to let it lose." Outside the courthouse, the world had already chosen its side. Parents pulled their children a little closer when Daniel's name came up. Former colleagues avoided interviews. Even friends stayed quiet, not out of betrayal but fear. Because if someone like Daniel Mercer could be framed, what chance did anyone else have? But not everyone turned away. Mrs. Alvarez, his elderly neighbor, still watered his plants. "He always fixed my fence," she told a reporter who tried to twist her words. "You don't fake kindness like that." A former client, Marcus Hill, stood on the courthouse steps one morning, speaking to anyone who would listen. "That man saved my life," he said. "When nobody believed me, he did. You think I'm going to stay quiet now?" And slowly, quietly, something began to shift. Not the headlines. The people. Lila found the crack on a rainy Tuesday night. It was buried in a stack of financial records, one transaction that didn't match the narrative, then another, and another. A pattern, but not the one the prosecution claimed. "Daniel," she said, sliding the papers across the table, "these accounts, they're real, but they're not yours." He frowned, scanning the numbers. "Then whose are they?" "That's what I'm going to find out." And she did. What she uncovered wasn't just a mistake. It was a system. 11 officers, all connected, all quietly rerouting seized funds, manipulating evidence, using Daniel's cases as a cover. He had gotten too close, too curious, without even realizing it. So they built a story around him, planted just enough truth to make the lie believable, A RICO case designed not to expose crime, but to hide it. The courtroom felt different the day the truth began to surface. Heavier, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Lila stood at the defense table, her hands steady despite the weight of what she was about to reveal. Daniel sat beside her, watching, not with hope, not yet, but with something close to it. "Your Honor," she began, her voice clear, "the defense would like to present new evidence." The prosecutor shifted, uneasy. And for the first time since this began, the narrative cracked. One by one, the pieces fell into place. Bank records, internal communications, testimony from a junior officer who couldn't carry the guilt any longer. "They told us it was for the greater good," he said, his voice shaking. "That Mercer was dirty, that we were cleaning up the system." "And did you believe that?" Lila asked. He hesitated. "I wanted to." The arrests came quickly after that. 11 officers, men who had worn badges, sworn oaths, stood in the same courtroom, now facing charges of their own. The same system they had twisted, now turned to hold them accountable. Daniel stood in the hallway afterward, the noise of reporters echoing around him. Cameras flashed, questions flew. "How does it feel to be vindicated? Do you blame the department? What's next for you?" He didn't answer. Not yet, because across the hall he saw Emily, standing beside Mrs. Alvarez, clutching a small drawing in her hands. He walked toward her slowly, the world fading into the background. "Hey, Em." She looked up, her face lighting in a way that made everything else disappear. "Daddy!" This time, when she ran to him, no one stopped her. He knelt down, pulling her into his arms, holding her tighter than he ever had before. "They said you were bad," she murmured into his shoulder. "But I told them you're not." His throat tightened. "You were right." She pulled back, handing him the drawing. It was simple, stick figures, bright colors. Him, her, holding hands. "A family." "I knew you'd come back," she said. And in that moment, Daniel realized something the case had almost taken from him. Not his reputation, not his career, but his belief in people. Weeks later, the headlines had changed. Milfield police scandal, 11 officers arrested in corruption case. Attorney Daniel Mercer cleared of all charges. But Daniel didn't keep a copy. He didn't need to. Because the real story wasn't in the headlines. It was in the quiet moments. Like when he reopened his office, not with a grand announcement, but with a simple sign, "Still here." Or when Lila walked in on her first day as his partner, smiling like she still couldn't quite believe it. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "Yes, I did," Daniel replied. "Someone believed in me when it mattered. That's how this works." And maybe that was the truth the scandal couldn't bury. That even in a system that can fail, people can choose not to. On a warm afternoon, Daniel stood outside the courthouse once more. Not as a defendant. Not even as a lawyer. Just as a man who had been broken and put back together by something stronger than justice. Kindness. A group of law students approached him hesitantly. "Mr. Mercer," one of them said, "we've been following your case. We just wanted to ask, how did you not lose hope?" Daniel thought for a moment. Then he smiled. "I did," he said honestly. "For a while." They exchanged glances, unsure how to respond. "But someone else held on to it for me," he continued. "And then someone else, and then someone else." He looked out at the steps where people moved in and out of the building, each carrying their own stories, their own struggles. "That's the thing about hope," he said softly. "It doesn't have to start with you, but it does have to pass through you." That night, as he tucked Emily into bed, she looked up at him with sleepy eyes. "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "Are you a hero now?" He chuckled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "No, sweetheart." "Why not?" He paused, then said, "Because heroes don't do things alone." She considered that, then nodded like it made perfect sense. "Then you had a lot of helpers," she said. Daniel smiled. "Yeah," he whispered. "I did." And as he turned off the light, he realized something simple, something powerful. The world hadn't changed because one man was proven innocent. It changed because people chose to care when it was easier not to. Because kindness showed up when fear told it to stay away. Because humanity quiet, stubborn, and unyielding, refused to let the wrong story win. And sometimes, that's enough to rewrite everything.